Motivation is a pretty strange concept. Often we can feel motivated to do something but seldom see it through. The truth is, there's probably loads of things that we wish we were doing or would like to do, but we don't push forward to actually achieving this. In this week's episode of GetPsyched, we're going to look a little bit more in depth as to why this is. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of GetPsyched, and this week we're going to be looking at the psychology of self-motivation. Now, the first thing that we probably need to do in order to develop our self-motivation is to have a different appreciation or a change in our language. Want to and would like to are two separate things. If we want to do something, then the likelihood is we'll go out and do it. If we'd like to do something, then the likelihood is we're kind of 50-50 about it and we sit back and maybe not go after it. More often than not, we're scared to push forward and actually achieve goals and outcomes that we desire. Ron Siegel of Harvard University argues for a cognitive neuroscientific answer for this. He argues that we're hardwired to automatically expect danger in new situations. So when we undertake a new task, more often than not, the first thought is that it's not going to go well. He argues that the likelihood is that we focus on negativity, we focus on the potential failure of new situations. And when we're looking at being self-motivated for new goals or new things that we want to do, this can be massively impactful. If we focus only on what might go wrong, or we see the danger in what might go wrong and not see the opportunity, then we're less likely to be self-motivated to undertake. Let's look at an example. So if we take smoking for an example, we probably know people ourselves, or we've heard stories of people who smoke and they know the health ramifications from smoking and yet refuse to quit. Now, the truth is, it might be easy to say that a smoker who doesn't quit smoking doesn't understand the health ramifications from smoking, but it's hard to get away from. Everybody knows that smoking causes massive health complications. So again, why don't smokers quit? Well, what happens is that there's often a focus on the dangers in quitting. So those cravings, or the difficulty that they had sleeping, or the difficulty that they had concentrating because they stopped smoking, takes precedence over the potential health benefits. The cravings are what the immediate implications of quitting smoking would be, and those benefits to health would be farther down the line and harder to see. And what makes this smoking example even more profound is that the difficulties in self-motivation, and we can use this and apply this to our own lives, is that we seek out immediate reward rather than long-term gain. So quitting smoking might cause real difficulties for you when you're craving, like I said, when you're sleeping, all these other things. But there's huge health benefits down the line, but those are so much harder to see than what might go on right now if you quit. Short-term immediate gain over long-term progression or long-term development is one of those things that really stifles self-motivation. It's the reason that people stick in jobs that they don't really like rather than quitting, taking a pay cut, and starting a business that they really are passionate about. And it's also the reason why people go out to parties rather than studying for exams that are a couple of weeks away. So how do we keep that self-motivation, or how do we develop that self-motivation and understand the value in long-term goals over immediate gratification? Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to steal a couple of points from Scott Geller, who created an incredible TED Talk on self-motivation. I'm actually going to attach the link down in the description below because it really is worth watching. And he said in order to develop self-motivation or understand our own self-motivation, we need to ask ourselves a number of questions. And if we answer yes to these questions, then we're self-motivated. The first of these questions is, can we do it, or do we have self-efficacy? Do we have the ability to undertake the tasks that we're seeking out? If the answer is yes, then we're on our way initially to self-motivation. The next question is, will it work, or what Scott Geller calls response efficacy. Again, if we answer yes to a belief that what we're doing will actually pay off or will actually work towards what we want, then we're again on our way to developing self-motivation. And the last question is it worth it? Again, if we answer yes, we're on our way to self-motivation again. But that understanding of worth puts value in, will this actually be worth it, rather than the consequences that might happen if we go after it. So with this all understood, and with those questions from Scott Geller understood, and an understanding of self-motivation and how we can lack self-motivation, what other steps can we undertake to develop our sense of self-motivation? Well, like I said, the first thing that we need to do is to overlook or to appreciate our desire for immediate gain over long-term development. And there's a number of ways that we can do this. Let's take the smoking example again. So what we might be able to do is we might actually be able to illustrate the good and bad points of quitting smoking down on a piece of paper. If you're a smoker and you want to quit, Have a column and write down all the bad reasons or all the bad things that would result in you quitting smoking and all the good things that will result in you quitting smoking. Sit with that table in front of you and really try and engage with the experience or the emotion that is tied to each of those points, both good and bad. So one of the bad things about quitting smoking might be that you'll struggle with cravings. Really try and emotionally engage with what that will feel like. Do the same for the good points. So let's think about this long term. You might become fitter, you might be able to go to the gym more, you'll have definite health benefits. Again, try and engage emotionally with how that feels. Via this emotional engagement and trying to really engage with what's going on there, we're training our brain and we're experiencing those good points and those bad points for quitting smoking in this example that I'm using. And my belief is, and the likelihood is, that you'll experience the bad points to a certain degree, but you'll place far more value in the benefits that you'll get from quitting smoking, like those long-term health benefits. In order to develop our self-motivation and understand the psychology of self-motivation, we need to be success seekers rather than failure avoiders. And what I mean by this is one of the points that I kind of talked to earlier in the video about not being scared of the failure or the potential for failure in undertaking a new task. Instead, be excited about the opportunity that might result. Another thing that you might be able to do in order to develop your sense of self-motivation is to connect with people who are like-minded or who are self-motivated themselves. Encompassing yourself in groups of people who are motivated really does play massive benefits for your own motivation levels. Guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. This week we've been looking at the psychology behind self-motivation and how we can develop our own sense of self-motivation. Thanks so much for watching and hopefully catch you next week.